Salofa lava, this is Pacific Waves from RNZ Pacific. I'm Susana Suisuki. Coming up, experts warn Pacific Islands are at risk of becoming narco-states. Also, a new report shows Australia stepping up as aid to the Pacific slumps.
New Zealand will be grouped in with these countries that are clearly deprioritising the Pacific to varying degrees.
And we check out some of the stories making headlines in the region this week. But first, Fiji Prime Minister Sitiveni Rabuka has told local media it may take some time to reshuffle his cabinet in the wake of anti-corruption charges being brought against two of the coalition government's three deputy prime ministers. Koroi Hawkins has more.
Manua Kamikamida from Rabuka's own PAP party last week resigned from cabinet after being charged by Fiji's Independent Commission Against Corruption, or FICAC, with perjury and giving false information to a public servant. And Biman Prasad, the president of the National Federation Party, is also expected to tender his resignation today after being charged by the Commission. FICAC is yet to reveal details of the charges, but the national broadcaster FBC is reporting it relates to him failing to declare his directorship in hotel ventures.
Meanwhile, Mr. Rabuka's Ocean of Peace initiative is being backed by China. Mr. Rabuka promotes the initiative as a way of maintaining a Pacific region free from great power rivalry and increasing militarization. Tiwila Fortai has more.
The Fiji Sun reports as part of celebrations marking 170 years of the Chinese community's settlement in Fiji, China's representative to the country, Wang Yang, confirmed support for the Ocean of Peace initiative. Mr. Yang says it aligns closely with the Chinese President Xi Jinping's Global Governance Initiative. The Ocean of Peace initiative has also been endorsed by the Pacific Islands Forum. It was first proposed by Mr. Rabuka in 2023. Mr. Rabuka is a former Fiji military commander and has instigated 2 military coups in Fiji.
The chair of a group advising the New Zealand government on organised crime says Pacific countries are at risk of becoming narco-states. The final report by the advisory group says the region is increasingly being used as a transshipment point for illicit goods. Caleb Fotheringham reports.
Steve Simon, the chairperson of a group advising the New Zealand government on organised crime, says business as usual means going backwards.
Fiji, Tonga, Samoa, Rarotonga are vulnerable because of their size and because of the economic difficulties those countries face to be subject to being at risk of becoming narco-state.
If it happens, Mr. Simon says it would mean a world of trouble for the Pacific and terrifying news for New Zealand and Australia.
That is organised crime coming in, corrupting government organisations such as the police, customs, other border agencies, and working to a point where they can control the market, they can control the goods that are coming to and from those countries.
The report says addressing organised crime would contribute positively to regional stability. The head of the Pacific Regional Security Hub at the University of Canterbury, Jose Sosa Santos, says the Pacific would not have a problem with drugs or an issue with transnational organised crime if it wasn't for New Zealand and Australia's appetite for illicit drugs.
There is no excuse for us to be counting dollars and cents when it comes to response or support to the Pacific in facing the current threat of drugs and transnational organised crime.
Mr. Simon says New Zealand has a moral obligation to the Pacific.
New Zealand is so connected to our Pacific nations. Everyone's got family or friends who are from the Pacific. But if you're looking purely from a New Zealand-centric approach, our borders really reach there. The drugs that are coming to New Zealand and Australia are passing through there.
Mr. Sosa Santos says regional criminal networks are implementing tactics that have been brought into the Pacific through the deportee policies of Australia, New Zealand and the United States.
How can Australia and New Zealand call themselves part of the Vuvale, the family, if both Australia and New Zealand are deporting criminals, and not all deportees are criminals, into the Pacific with no job prospects, no cultural understanding, connections back into the communities or countries? And of course, a percentage of those deportees will turn to crime.
However, Mr. Sosa Santos says it's not too late to turn around the current regional drug problems.
The genie is definitely not out of the bottle. The red flags are well and truly waving. There is still much that we can do to assist regional law enforcement.
He says low population numbers in most Pacific Island countries means it's easier to try and address drug issues in the region, with the exception, of course, being Papua New Guinea.
That was RNZ Pacific's Caleb Fotheringham with that report. A new report says New Zealand is lagging behind in development aid to the Pacific, while Australia is stepping up. All the while, China are taking a more grassroots approach. Kaya Selby has more.
In the next 2 years, New Zealand is expected to reduce its overseas aid funding by around 35%. That's according to a new report by the Australian-based Lowy Institute, and it's a problem, because 10% of all development funding in the region comes from Aotearoa. They've been tracking aid to the Pacific since 2008 and say Western partners have pulled back so much that Pacific aid is now lower than pre-pandemic levels. Lead researcher Riley Duke says health, education and climate support are at their most vulnerable.
Across the region, what has suffered from that has been the more old school areas of development focus, so things like education and health. And both those sectors have seen pretty consistent declining support over the last decade.
It's not just New Zealand pulling back, the United States, the UK and much of Europe are as well.
The temperature check from the Pacific, along with the US pulling out to a significant degree in some countries, the UK and Europe, New Zealand will be grouped in with these countries that are clearly deprioritising the Pacific to varying degrees.
New Zealand aid expert Dr. Terence Wood says it leaves much to be desired.
We will reduce our funding to multilateral organisations, the organisations that operate globally. And we're already a pretty stingy donor when it comes to contributing to global public goods of the sort that multilateral organisations do, but we will get worse.
But while New Zealand pulls back, Australia have stepped up massively. They now account for nearly half of all aid to the region at a time when other aid programs in their neighbouring Melanesian countries appear most at risk. Here's what the report says.
Australia remains the Pacific's largest development partner by a wide margin. Their dominance as the Pacific Islands' leading development partner looks likely to insulate the region from the bulk of recent aid cuts.
Nevertheless, it still leaves a hole of more than $200 million in Pacific aid.
In parts of the world like the Pacific, it's sort of the currency of engagement. It's how relationships are built. It's how partnership is demonstrated. It's sort of it can be the foot in the door for relationship building, but also it can be a way that a richer economy can demonstrate that they care about the outcomes of a region. And it's a tool in the soft power toolkit.
And with growing needs being met with less Western cash, Pacific Island nations have but one place to turn. Here's the report again.
As China has transitioned more of its aid mix towards grants, its engagement has also become smaller in scale and more locally targeted, aligning with Xi Jinping's push for a small and beautiful project approach.
Dr. Wood says that New Zealand still has a key role to play in minimising China's influence in the region.
By virtue of our ties to a number of Pacific countries, we're always going to have a presence in the region. Probably the biggest problem is the quality of our aid will become worse as we start to give it in more transactional ways, and that'll have an impact on the most vulnerable people in the Pacific.
Whether these grave predictions play out remains to be seen.
RNZ Pacific's Kaya Selby with that report. Now we're going to have a look at what's making the news this week with our morning bulletin editor, Christina Persico. Kia ora, Christina.
Kia ora, Susanna.
We're starting today with measles. What's the latest on the New Zealand outbreak?
Yeah, so as of Tuesday morning, there were 10 cases in the current outbreak. 3 in Wellington, 2 in Auckland, 2 in Manawatu, and 1 each in Taranaki, Northland and Nelson. So it's pretty spread out, and the concern is that it's spreading in the community with authorities being unaware of the full picture.
Yeah, I spoke to AUT University immunologist Dr. Chris Buli-Uver yesterday, and he said communities are likely feeling vaccine fatigue after the COVID-19 pandemic, and that limited time and poor health access leads to poor vaccine outcomes.
Yeah, so the New Zealand Health Minister, Simeon Brown, spoke to RNZ this morning. He says vaccination of the Pasifika population here in Aotearoa has increased from 68% to 82% in the last 12 months, which is good, but still not enough.
And what's the Pacific response to this?
So Samoa's Ministry of Health has reacted to this. They are urging parents to make sure children under 2 years old receive both measles vaccine doses. It's also conducting outreach in areas with low coverage. Of course, Samoa got the worst of New Zealand's 2019 outbreak, which spread into Samoa and 83 people died. Te Marae Ora, the Cook Islands Ministry of Health, last week advised the public to take precautionary measures when travelling overseas, given the high level of travel between the Cooks and New Zealand.
Something to keep a close watch on for sure. Okay, let's look at aid now. A new report from the Lowy Institute says Australia is the Pacific's largest aid donor by some margin.
Yeah, this was reported by the ABC. The Pacific Aid Map looks at development spending in the region from 2008 until the end of 2023. This map shows that Australia provided about 43% of all overseas development finance to Pacific countries in 2023. That's more than 4 times that of the next largest donor, which is New Zealand. China provided about $150.5 million US in development finance to the Pacific in that year, 2023, putting it below New Zealand, Japan and the US. But the map report says China had a narrower focus on a smaller set of Pacific countries, so it remained the second largest bilateral donor in Kiribati, the Federated States of Micronesia, Papua New Guinea, Solomon Islands and Vanuatu.
Moving on to Fiji now, a second Deputy Prime Minister has been charged with corruption-related offences in as many weeks.
Yeah, this has been an interesting period in Fiji, with a lot of corruption allegations flying around. We've had the Anti-Corruption Commissioner stood down, Barbara Malimali. Last week, another Deputy PM, Manoa Kamikamitha, resigned from the Cabinet after being charged with perjury and giving false information to a public servant.
And now Biman Prasad has been charged, but the Fiji Independent Commission Against Corruption, or FISAC, has not released any details on the charges, right?
That's right. However, the state broadcaster in Fiji, the FBC, is reporting that Mr. Prasad was charged with failing to declare his directorship in hotel ventures as required under the Political Parties Act. He was expected to resign from Cabinet on Tuesday and was due to appear in court on November the 17th.
And finally, Christina, what's happening around the rest of the world?
The US federal government shutdown is continuing. This, of course, could have a flow-on effect into the Pacific, which includes US territories and countries connected quite closely to the US through a compact of free association. Earlier in the month, leaders were saying they were watching Washington, D.C. closely. Our Northern Marianas correspondent, Mark Rabago, told us the first austerity measures announced were work hour cuts for executive branch employees. There's also been talk of food stamps being suspended. At the moment, it's a matter of watch this space.
And the Louvre Museum in Paris has also been in the news.
It has. I was lucky enough to visit the Louvre a couple of years ago. I love the Louvre. I love museums. I'm very boring. But on the 19th, there was a heist, and the thieves made off with jewels worth 88 million euros. It took them 7 minutes. I have to say I'm a bit impressed. The Louvre is enormous, so they must have had it properly scattered out. Anyway, French police have made 2 arrests. Now, in France, people suspected of committing serious crimes can be held for up to 96 hours before being charged. So we may find out more once that period has passed.
Vinaka Christina, that's Christina Persico, our morning bulletin editor with the Pacific News Wrap. That's Pacific Waves for today. For all episodes, head over to rnz.co.nz/Pacific. We're also on Spotify, Apple and iHeartRadio. From myself and the RNZ Pacific team, tō whā, sui fua.